Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Prashant Ajmera. I'm an immigration lawyer based in Ahmedabad, India. I'm a Canadian citizen and involved with the immigration practice since last 33 years. And what we have recently started is the Bridge series from India to the world. And today we have an eminent immigration lawyer, Sara from Portugal. She has more than 15 years of an experience and leading immigration lawyer in Portugal. And she's going to share with us today not only about the golden visa. The every Portugal program, they talk about the golden visa. But I requested Sara that let's talk something more than golden visa so people can have an idea that it's Portugal is not only open for the multimillionaires and the HNIs and ultra HNIs, it's open for the businessmen, professionals, retirees visas, or probably people normal visas. So different kinds of visas are there. So I'll ask Sarah to shed light on those visas, primarily for the businessmen who are interested in expanding their business via Portugal. So Sarah, please go ahead, enlighten
Thank you so
us.
much, Prashant, for the invitation to be here in this webinar. As mentioned, I'm an immigration lawyer in Portugal. I do immigration law and real estate law. Focus on immigration already for 15 years so far. Um, Recently, the Portuguese government is introducing a lot of changes to the immigration regime in Portugal. So the framework is now totally different, and it's very important to have in mind the changes because they will and they for sure have an impact in the decisions when coming to Portugal. At this moment, we can say that as a general rule, Portugal continues to accept immigrants and needs the immigrants, but the Portuguese government, the current government, has a more focus on the integration. So they prefer to, they closed some programs, they open another ones in the perspective of making a more regulated immigration to Portugal, guaranteeing the integration of the immigrants. Having that in mind, our office is based in Lisbon. We provide the full scope of services to our clients. We are also part of some networks, national and internationally, including in America and in UK, in Middle East, and we are more than welcome to assist clients that are coming to Portugal. Having that in mind, I will start by the standard programs. Okay, I have here a brief presentation. Prasha, I don't know if I'm allowed to share it.
Yeah, I just made you a co-host, so you should be in a position to do it.
Okay, perfect. So, mm, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Is this okay like this?
that's good.
Okay, perfect. So, let's start with the standard permits. So in Portugal, we usually distinguish between standard residency permits and golden visa permits. Why? Standard residency permits, they follow the standard regime, which means that they are designed for people that want to relocate to Portugal. And by relocate to Portugal, we shall consider someone that wants to spend in Portugal at least 6 months a year, which also means to transfer tax residency to Portugal. Some of those standard permits are the ones that I mentioned in this slide, which is D7 for passive income visa holders, D2 for entrepreneurs visas, and D8 for digital nomad. But there are others, for instance, D3 for high qualified workers. Those permits, each of them have different requirements that are attached to their very specific justification. So, for instance, on the D7 passive income visa, the
Mhm.
holders are required to present a proof of a monthly average income of 920. Why 920? Because this is the minimum salary in Portugal. So it's an association of what is needed for them to live in Portugal. This passive income visa, it can be granted for people that are retired, so that they have pensions, people that have, for instance, rentals, so they can receive that income without performing an active profession, or people that lives from dividends, royalties, so
Mhm.
anything that they can receive in a periodic basis without performing an active profession. Differently, The D2 is the entrepreneur visa, and here we are not looking as a requirement for the minimum income. We are looking for a business incorporation in Portugal with a business plan. So here the recommendation is always to incorporate a company, which we will explain afterwards. Incorporating that company, they should present a business plan, and with that business plan, they apply for the visa. There is no requirement in terms of capital investment or the type of business that you present. But of course, depending on the countries from where you are applying for, it's recommendable to have business plans very strong and that show that you have done your research to the market. Innovative business, IT business, startups, they are more than welcome to Portugal, and the government has incentives for those purposes. Okay. D8, it's a recent visa, the digital nomad visa, and it was created after COVID because we experienced that during COVID, due to the security of the country and the very good healthcare, a lot of digital nomads were moving to Portugal and to work remotely from Portugal. So the government opened this program specifically for those. Here, there are two main requirements. One, the applicant must continue to work for abroad because otherwise, if he's providing services to Portugal, in that case, we will be under a D2 and not under a D8. So in the D8, they need to continue to provide services for clients abroad or for companies abroad. They can be workers or they can be service providers. Also important, here the requirement in terms of income is higher. So a digital nomad, to be able to apply, should provide an average income of 3,680, which corresponds to 4 times the minimum salary. Why this purpose? Because here the government is associating the remote worker with high qualified activities. So there is a minimum average of income to make sure that they can sustain themselves in Portugal while providing that services abroad. The standard permits, different from the golden visa, they have some restrictions, and those restrictions are actually very recent because they come from the recent reform on the Portuguese immigration law. Main restriction, I would say at this moment, is family reunification, because at this moment, family reunification for standard permits is only allowed after 2 years of holding the permit. Okay, so imagine that you have a couple. One of the couples comes to Portugal under a D7 or a D8 or a D2 and wants to bring the spouse. That is only allowed 2 years after he already has the Portuguese permit. However, there is an alternative. If the spouse gets a job in Portugal, she can apply by herself, not as family reunification, and they can come more or less at the same time. Or we have exceptions in the law, and those exceptions, they exist to protect the family. So in case there are minor children, that rule of the 2 years does not apply. So the couple can come together with the minor children to protect the union of the family. Also, a restriction on the standard permits is the time that is requested for the applicant to stay in Portugal to keep the permit. So this is one of the biggest difference regarding golden visa. Here, as I mentioned, the standard permits, they are designed for people that want to relocate to Portugal. So they are designed for people that will live in Portugal permanently. This means that if those applicants, they are out of Portugal for more than 6 consecutive months or more than 8 interpolated months, the permit can be cancelled. So this is designed for people that actually want to relocate, which also means tax relocation, and consequently, every time there is a client willing to move to Portugal under this permit, it's always important to do a tax analysis to understand what will be the tax impact of those relocations. One important highlight, as I mentioned, the Portuguese government is very focused in attracting high qualified activities and high qualified workers. So for that, we have specific tax regimes. At this moment, it's called the IFICI, and that tax regime allows for flat rate on the personal income tax of 20%, and that is applicable during 10 years, and the exemption of taxation of foreign income in general terms. So this is one of the measures to attract individuals to Portugal to perform high qualified activities. Still under the standard permits, one of the benefits is that they have large renewals. So the first card always starts with 2 years validity, but the renewals are valid for 3 years, which is a little bit different from the Golden Visa, as I will explain, because Golden Visa, you have a first card of 2 years and then you renew every 2 years. Standard permits, they are subject to a two-step process, which is also different from Golden Visa. From Golden Visa, you can apply straight away. You make the investment, you apply for a permit right away. Here is different. Here the process starts abroad. So you apply for the visa, normally at VFF services, because at this moment the consulates have delegated the powers for visa issuance to VFS company. And the process starts with that visa request. That visa is valid for 4 months. During those 4 months, you should relocate to Portugal, where you will do the step number 2 of the process. That is an interview before the Portuguese immigration office, where you have to present the documents of your application. Normally, this takes around 6 months. I always suggest for the client that wants to relocate to Portugal under these standard permits to start the process more or less 6 months before the date they expect to be in Portugal. But this time is mostly dependent on the availability of appointments to start the process at VFS. So there are countries where at this moment there are a huge volume of applications, so the timings are a little bit larger than comparing with other countries. So it's always important right away on the beginning of the process to check with VFS when it's the next appointment so that we can start organizing the application based on those timings. Also important and different from the Golden Visa, it's accommodation, because those standard permits, they are designed for people that are willing to relocate to Portugal. It's important to have the accommodation proof for purpose of the visa application. That accommodation should be a rental of at least 1 year or a real estate that you may have in Portugal, but can also be, for instance, a responsibility term of someone that you know in Portugal. However, if you go for the route of the responsibility term, there will be some requirements in terms of the house dimension, how many people are there, where it's located, and the room that you have, so that the immigration office is trying to avoid too many people under the same address, which was one of the reasons for the very recent changes and restrictions that were implemented, always with the aim of allowing a very fair integration of the immigrants in Portugal, securing that they can only come to Portugal if they have the necessary measures of integration. This is the standard highlights for the standard permits. The costs are also very low when comparing with the Golden Visa. Here, per applicant, in a maximum of 500 euros, you can have all the process done in terms of the taxes that you pay to the administrative entities, and there are no investments. So the capital that here needs to be considered will depend on the specific permit that you are requesting. On the D7, the 920 monthly fee. In the D2, not a capital investment, but at least a company incorporation and a business plan. And under the D8, the high volume of capital in terms of average of monthly income. On this perspective, allow me to make some comments regarding company incorporation in Portugal, because it's something that most of the applicants that are relocating do, or to own the real estates, or to develop business, or even to make, for purpose of the Golden Visa, their own investment. Prashant, I don't know if you want me to do here a small pause for any questions, or if I can continue.
No, you can continue. I think we'll do the question answers at the end.
Okay, perfect. So just to give here the perspective before the company incorporation, what happens after the 5 years? So as I mentioned, The standard permits, they are valid for 2 years initially, and then they are renewed for 3. After those initial 5 years, the applicant can apply for a permanent residency card. Same rights, same obligations, also some mandatory residency periods in Portugal. So there are not allowed absences for more than 2 consecutive years, neither for 3 interpolated years. Plus, at this point, at the permanent residency, is already mandatory to present the proof of A2 language proof in Portugal. This A2 is basic level. Basically, here in Europe, we have A, B, and C. C corresponds to the proficiency. So here we are speaking about the basic level. It's something that there are a lot of courses available, and applicants can do either school teaching or home teaching and then exams, or just lessons with an average of 150 hours to learn and to get the certificates. After that permanent residency, there is an option. So basically, after 10 years, so initial 5 plus the permanent residency 5, the applicant can decide to apply or not for the Portuguese citizenship. For clients which countries allow double passport, that will be the most natural path. And by applying for the Portuguese citizenship, they will also apply and get the European citizenship. So it's the European passport. And of course, then they can grant it to their children, minor children, born children, so that they can continue and the Portuguese citizenship descendancy. For clients that are coming from countries where that passport, double passport is not allowed, in that case, they can continue to renew the permanent residency, gives exactly the same rights in Portugal. It can be eventually converted to European blue cards, other European countries' residency permits, depending on the situation of the client, if he's going to study, if he's going to work. So there are options of flexibility in terms of mobility in Europe. Also important, this is more specific for clients on United States. The Portuguese passport does not request tax implications by itself. Tax implications in Portugal are always dependent on the presence in Portugal for more than 6 months a year. So this is, for instance, different from the United States, where just because you hold a US passport, you should pay taxes in US. So here is different. If you have the passport and you live abroad, there are no tax implications. If you have the passport and you live in Portugal, you are a Portuguese tax residency, you have to declare in Portugal the worldwide income. So in terms of company incorporation, we have 3 main kinds of companies in Portugal. The private limited company by quotas, which we call LDA. We have a very similar one, also LDA, but for sole shareholder owners. So one person only as shareholder of the company. And we have the public limited company, which is called Sociedade Anónima. Most of the companies in Portugal incorporated, they are LDAs or the sole shareholder company. Why? The requirements are much more flexible, and the number of shareholders is also different. For you to have an idea, for a public limited company, you need to have at least 5 shareholders and a share capital of 50,000 euros. However, for the sole shareholder company, you can incorporate the company by yourself and have a share capital of €1. Same happens for the LDAs. You can have 2 shareholders and €1 each as share capital. Of course, it's not recommendable to incorporate the company just with €1 because of all the starting costs and also taxes that are involved, and also in the perspective of the capacity before creditors and business partners. But it's very common to incorporate companies with €500 share capital or €1,000 share capital. We have in Portugal a system that is called a fast track for incorporation, that is called Empresa na Hora, where companies can be incorporated right away in a corporate office desk in exactly 1 hour. However, it's important to have in mind that To make this happen, you need to have an appointment in advance, and that appointment can take times to get. So if you are considering to incorporate the company in Portugal, and you want it to be a fast process, or we try it online, which is also possible, and the average can be between 2 weeks to 3 months to have the company incorporated, or right away from the beginning of the process, we book an appointment for purpose of incorporating on our process so that we can present ourselves in that day before the registry office and make the incorporation. In terms of share capital, as I mentioned, for the standard quotas companies, it's €1 minimum. For the public limited company, is €50,000. Taxes in Portugal for companies are also very interesting at this moment. This government is also reducing the taxation of the corporate income tax, and it's planned to decrease 1% a year in the following years. For 2026, the corporate income tax is of 19%. However, we can have reduced rates for small, medium-sized companies and for startup companies in the first 50,000 euros of taxable profits. So, for instance, in small and medium-sized companies, the reduced rate comes from the 19% to the 15% on the first 50,000. And on the startup companies, it comes from the 19% for the 12.5% in the first 50,000 also. Important to say that to have the status of small and medium-sized company or startup company, it's necessary to make the qualification of the entity. I have here the requirements for the startup, just for you to see that it's not super hard to get the qualification. The company must, for purpose of startup, the company must be active for less than 10 years, needs to be less than 250 employees. The annual turnover shall not exceed 50 million. The company itself cannot result from a spin-off of a larger company and needs to be based in Portugal or have at least 25 employees based in Portugal. And then there is an additional requirement that is to meet an innovation or funding requirement. For instance, having an innovative or scalable business model, recognize R&D technology or credentials, venture capital funding, or investment from the Portuguese Bank of Fomento, that is a Portuguese bank dedicated to the capitalization of companies. So it's not hard to get the qualification, and it would be very important to the first years of the company where they can benefit from this reduced tax in terms of corporate income. One of the most important topics also, it's the payroll taxes and social security, because I would say that it's a very relevant aspect to have in consideration in the business plan due to the high contributions to social security that in Portugal it's mandatory for each employee. In total, it will be 34.75% of the employee income that is for purpose of the social security, where 23% are under the responsibility of the employer and 11% from the employee. So this is something to have in mind because although the Portuguese minimum salary is 290, the actual cost of having an employee in Portugal will be higher due to these obligations and contributions. And finally, I would say that I would give just the big perspective on the Golden Visa. Just to finalize, that is the most known program around the globe in terms of publicity. The Golden Visa, different from the standard permits, is designed for people that are preparing a plan B or a future relocation. Why? Because does not request physical residency in Portugal. Basically, you apply for the permit directly, and the only thing that you need to comply for purpose of keeping it and to access a permanent residency card after 5 years or citizenship after 10 years is to fulfill a 7 days presence per year in Portugal. Here in the Golden Visa is also more flexible in terms of family reunification. Even adult children can be included if they are studying in any place of the world. And all of them will be entitled to the initial 2 years card that is renewed every 2 years, a 5 years card as a permanent residency card with the same flexibility in terms of mobility, and to the citizenship after 10 years. For the purpose, there are one main requirement that is an eligible investment. At this moment, I can say that we have 5 eligible investments, no longer real estate. Real estate was closed in 2023. But at this moment, although we have 5 options of investment, only 2 routes are the ones that are selected mostly by the investors. Those routes are the investment in venture capital funds. They need to be Portuguese funds, where there will be an investment by the applicant of 500,000 euros, which can be divided between different funds to balance the risk of those funds. Those funds, they can be open or closed in the perspective that they can offer immediate liquidity to the investor or a long-term liquidity. And if it's a good fund performing, for sure they will cover the costs of the golden visa that will be much higher than the standard permits. Standard permits, as I mentioned, they have a cost of around 500 euros per person. Here in the golden visa, it's quite different. The cost per person will be around the 7,000. Basically, you are paying for the flexibility that this allows you and for the fact that you are not becoming subject to any kind of taxation in Portugal. So this is the full perspective of flexibility that you can get. Besides the investment in funds of 500,000, you have a second route that is now very attractive for investors in the perspective that they do the comparison between how many family members I can put in the program under this option. And this second option is the donation. And it's donation for activities of artistic output, reconstruction, or maintenance of national heritage. So basically, here we are speaking about the support of cultural. The standard donation, let's say, it's 250. However, for options and projects that are in the interior of Portugal, the minimum fee is 200,000. So that are the ones that are most looked out by our clients, and that can eventually create here strategic investments in the perspective that it's a 200,000 donation, but when comparing with the 500 option, you have the remaining 300,000 to invest in other flexible option and to give you the return that eventually in 7, 8, 10 years will cover this donation of the 200,000. So it's a matter of calculation and to see what are the alternative investment options that you may have. And for applicants coming from countries where there are capital restrictions in terms of bringing the money abroad, this option of the 200,000 normally is the one that works very well. Having this in mind, the access to citizenship is also very similar to the options of the standard permits. So here, after 5 years, the applicant also have the right to a permanent residency card. The main difference is that there is no need for physical presence. It continues to be the 7 days a year. And after those complete 10 years, the access to Portuguese citizenship in the exact same conditions of the standard permits that we spoke about in the beginning of the presentation, with the same possibility of transferring to minor children and unborn children, and to get the European access with the European citizenship. Prashant, these are the main highlights. Reasons to choose Portugal are more than known. We are in different rankings, and I will not list all the rankings, but just highlighting about the fact that we are.
It's very good, excellent, it's very clear, neat and clean. But I wanted to understand, like you mentioned, the D2 visa is an entrepreneur visa, and then you have a golden visa with the 500,000 investment and creating a jobs. So, but the basic process remains the same, that you have to come up with the business plans and you have to create the jobs, whether it's D2 visas or
No,
what's the
in the
difference?
options of creating jobs under the Golden Visa is just creating the jobs. There are no business plan involved, so nobody will depend or making your permit dependent on the analysis of the business plan, if it's a strong business plan or an innovative business plan. That only happens in the entrepreneur visa. On the Golden Visa, it's just job creation.
And how do you create the job creates? I mean, how do you show that? Means you are making
By showing the labor contracts and the contributions to Social Security regarding those employees.
so do I have to come to Portugal and set up a business, or I'm making an investment into expand the business, which is an existing, and I made a 500,000 investment and it has created a jobs.
The company that will hire the employees needs to be located in Portugal. Okay. So basically, you incorporate the company
Right.
and you create 10 jobs.
So basically, like I incorporated a companies, I'm making a 500,000 investments and what, running a restaurants or a manufacturing unit
No, there
or
are different options. Let me just show you here because it can be confusing. Okay, so you have one option where you incorporate the company and you
right,
create or you hire 10 people and there are no capital investments. Okay?
right.
No, just hiring 10 people. They can have the minimum salary, they can be high qualified workers. The relevant point here is that you incorporate the business, can be a LDA company, as we mentioned, with a shareholder of one shareholder and €1 as capital, and you hire 10 people. You
Right.
pay their salaries and you do the contributions to Social Security. That is eligible. Okay. A different option, which has no attraction because includes capital investment, is the third one that I have here. That is company incorporation or reinforcement of capital of a company that already exists with a contribution of €500,000
Hmm.
plus job creations. So
Okay.
basically, this is very similar to the option of the 10 jobs, but here we are putting capital. In the previous
Right.
one, you are not.
So basically, like I'm a window cleaning business. I come there and I says I'm hiring 10 people and they're going to do window cleaning in Lisbon, and I'm giving them a jobs and paying them a minimum salaries. Does that qualify?
Correct.
Okay. So, and what is the difference in D2 visa, the D2 permit? This is giving me a golden visa. The D2 doesn't give me a golden visa, but it
Exactly.
gives
The
me a
D2
permit.
gives you a standard permit, meaning that you have to relocate to Portugal
Right.
and you need to perform the business here, and it will be more relevant the
Okay.
business plan that you have because in the Golden Visa, you go straight away for the residency permit. There are no prior validations. On the entrepreneur is different. They will only grant you the visa to access the permit if they consider that your business plan and the company you incorporated have a valid and a solid purpose in Portugal.
And with respect to the children, because one of the biggest questions I keep hearing and some of the cases doesn't move forward is because of the children's age. So whether I go for a D2 7 or 8 or golden visa, the 18s and then what dependency of the children needs to be shown, and if they are dependents and they don't get a citizenship, they are out. Am I
Yeah.
correct?
Correct. So basically, under the Golden Visa, it's more flexible in the perspective that you can add the adult children to the process and they can get a permit and they don't need to live in Portugal, neither study in Portugal, and they can do their path until citizenship. On the standard permits,
Right. They have to be.
adult children, they need to live in Portugal and they need to be enrolled in Portuguese school.
Mm. Right, right. They are basically the family is moving uh,
Exactly. It's for
to
people
Portugal.
that are planning to move.
Yeah, they're planning to move. Yeah, yeah. No, no, that's the big difference between the two. I understand that. Yeah, excellent. Anybody else wants to have a questions?
Yes, I am having a question. In
Right,
fact, Prashantji, first, thanks a lot for this wonderful session which you are conducting.
right.
Sana, Paula is already our partner in our India-based GFV Universal Consulting. It's a long-term strategy which